Wow, it's time to strap in for another edition of the CarsGuide Podcast, the show that takes you beyond the test drive. This is episode number 235, Best EVs Not Coming to Australia. I'm CarsGuide Deputy Editor James Cleary, and joining me today to look at the great electric vehicles we're currently missing out on are Senior Editor Tim Nicholson.
Hello.
And the zero emissions guru in charge of our EV guide, Tom White.
Hello.
We'll also take a look at the fresh metal we've been driving this week and unearth the comment of the week, not to mention being on standby to respond to feedback coming in via YouTube, because once again, we're live streaming. So YouTubers jump into the comments and get involved as we go. So let's get into this week's show. Look, Tom, the best EVs not coming to Australia. For a long time, the much anticipated electric vehicle wave was just a swell building up out the back. But now it's starting to push up a little more steeply and make its presence felt in the Aussie new car market. A few people are paddling in. And just as a bit of background, only around 2% of new vehicle sales so far this year are full electric, but more than 8,500 registrations year to date for 2022 is up 400% on 2021. We've got everything from the MG ZS through the Tesla Model 3 to the Porsche Taycan. There are also offerings from Audi, BMW, Hyundai, Jaguar, Kia, Lexus, Mazda, Merc, Mini, Nissan, Volvo, soon to be joined by Subaru, Toyota and Volkswagen, and I've probably missed some. So, Tom, this is clearly getting serious, but there are still some compelling EV options that we're missing out on. The aim is to work around the group and list some of those. Can I start with you for your first cab off the rank on one that we're not getting in Australia?
One that we're not getting in Australia. So I think I'd like to start with the Peugeot 208 or 2008, same car underneath. But I really like the look of this car. I'm sure people have already seen the 2008, the combustion version of that rolling around. I think the design of it is kind of a bit out there, and it's what French cars kind of need to be. You know, they need to be exciting to look at. I think they've done a great job of that. And this car is a little different from some of the other EVs out there because it doesn't share it's not a completely elite EV platform. It does share its platform with other combustion vehicles, namely the combustion versions of each car. But there are a few subtle differences. This one's cool. It's got about a Nissan Leaf E Plus kind of range for the 208 hatch. So it's about 340 to 360 Ks of range, 100 kilowatts, 300 Newton meters. So it's the most powerful car in the 208 range as well. And Peugeot, when they put this car out there, they were expecting the sales globally to be about 10% fully electric out of, the combustion, whatever it is. It ended up being 25% of the demand. So they had to ramp it up massively to try and sell them.
Interesting. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so pretty exciting. Same story with the 2008, essentially same running gear and similar kind of range, a little bit less, 340 Ks thereabouts.
Just one extra zero.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. So it's a slightly bigger, all the rest of it, SUV, a bit more popular, that kind of thing. Both are available as right-hand drive. So there's no reason why we can't have them here. They just haven't been sort of locked in by the local Peugeot division. So it'd be nice to see them. Please bring them here.
Very good. Okay.
Totally agree. That 208 in particular is such a sexy little thing, like adorable.
Okay. It gets the official adorable stamp from Tim. So, Tim, that's great. Thank you, Tom. Let's stick with you. Your first nominee here is?
Well, a fairly huge American thing, and that is, of course, the GMC Hummer, the reborn Hummer.
Of course.
Yeah, look, this is an interesting one. It's obviously there was a brand under GM for a long time. They killed it off. They brought it back under GMC. We saw this thing a couple of years ago. It's based on GM's doing an architecture called, I think it's Ultium, the battery packs and all that kind of stuff. This thing is a bit of a beast. I'm sure we've all seen it by now. It's such a fascinating vehicle. It's got up to about 530 kilometers of range, depending on which variant you get. It's also, if you don't want the pickup version, you can get an SUV version, which to me, I think looks better. I don't know what you guys think, but I think the pickup looks a bit weird, but the SUV looks quite cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's when we're talking weird and pickups, the Cybertruck is probably the one end of the spectrum. It's not up there. It's distinctive, I suppose, is a way of putting it.
I think it brings the excess of Hummer to, the electric world. That's really what it is. And the battery's like enormous. It's more than 100 kilowatt hours or something. It's like one of the biggest batteries in the world for like a automotive purpose.
It's
for what it's worth,
completely bananas.
I think it makes Hummer more relevant. I think it's taking all of that macho posturing and putting it into a package that is altogether more modern. I think it's genius. And it's funny that they've put it under the GMC umbrella, because it was, of course, before a standalone company and then a standalone brand. So to make it a GMC brings it in the tent a bit, makes it a little more approachable. I think it's a really smart move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they were reluctant to kind of, relaunch a standalone brand again. So it does kind of make sense that they've done this. And obviously it will go head to head with, the Silverado in its own stable, as well as an upcoming Ram EV and Tesla Cybertruck, as you say. It's got a cool feature, this crab walk feature. So it's the four-wheel steering where it kind of can go that way, which is wacky and incredible. But look, it's not coming to Australia at any point soon. Obviously, we've got GMSV here, who are doing right-hand drive versions of, the regular Silverado and a couple of other things. But I mean, it would be a stretch. I think it's a never say never thing, but it's unlikely for now.
Okay, cool. That's good. Now, thank you, Tim. Let me pick up things, and I'm going to twin two cars that in the marketplace are actually head-to-head rivals, but they're so similar, it just doesn't bear thinking about. The Ford F-150 Lightning and the Chevy Silverado EV that you were just referring to, Tim. The F-150 Lightning, twin motors, driving all four wheels, 420 kilowatts, 1,050 Newton meters. That's more than any F-150 ever. It'll go 0 to 60 in mid 4 seconds. So, you're talking high fours, 0 to 100 kmh. It'll tow 4.5 tons. It's got that nifty onboard scale feature, which I think is driven through the tail lights. So as you load the car up, it shows you it progressively loads up, which is just so cool. Why wasn't that thought of, a century ago? And it's got the front trunk, so a frunk, but it's 400 litres, and it kind of fixes that pickup ute conundrum where you've got all that space, but it's so impractical to use. So where the engine was, you just open up a 400-litre boot at the front where you can put your groceries and you can put all your stuff, and it doesn't roll around like, pinballs in a pinball machine, which is such a win. And the Silverado, 1,058 Newton meters, 0 to 60, mid fours, so similar kind of ridiculous acceleration for something that's big. You're talking 640 kilometre range. And you can charge it. It will take a 350 kilowatt fast charge. You can get 160 k's of range in 10 minutes. It'll tow the same amount. And in fact, after launch, they're going to have a fleet-focused model that will tow up to 9 tons. So that electric motor pulling power and torque is starting to really find its feet with these more conventional kind of pickup offerings. So you mentioned GMSV at the moment. It's not on the agenda. Ford's bringing in the F-150 in combustion version. So I reckon those two might be a never say never as well. But at the moment, they're just not on the menu.
I think the story with F-150 is they literally cannot build enough of the electric version to even meet demand. Like,
isn't it amazing? Yeah.
They've sold so many more than they can even build that it's like, wow, but I think all these trucks are so exciting because they bring that like fresh electric ideas to the space,
Totally. All right. Well, Tom, we're back to you, my friend, for your second.
All right, well, let's keep it going with the trucks then. And the big one that everyone loves, and I get asked about constantly, is the Rivian R1T.
Yep.
It's out there. You can actually buy it. It's a physical product. It's not something that's still coming, or it's not something from one of those electric automakers that's like, no, we'll have a production version soon.
Tesla.
But we've only... yeah. But it's out there. People can drive it only in left-hand drive form for now, which is part of the reason why we can't see it. There's so much hype around this thing. I think people can't wait to get their hands on it, even in Australia. The base model does cost the equivalent of 95,000 Australian dollars. And that'll only take you about 370 kilometers on a single charge. So, I mean, that kind of limits its appeal, like that entry level model anyway, for Australia, I think. But it brings so many of these cool ideas like I was talking about before. So there's like the top spec one will go 550 k's on a full charge. And it has a motor on each of the wheels. So it kind of gets this control over stuff you can do off-road that you wouldn't have even on any combustion car at all. And stuff like, so it's got a pass-through behind the rear seats, like between the tray and behind the rear seats. So it's like this big cutout under the car, and there's an option to have an entire rollout kitchen in there that has like an induction cooktop and like all of this awesome stuff. That's just such a no-brainer for the electric era. So I think really exciting.
Good.
In terms of like we can do the camping potential for it. They've teamed up with people to have like a official OEM rooftop tent, stuff like that. So really exciting. I constantly get asked about it. The problem is Rivian can't seem to meet demand in America again.
Same deal.
Too many people want one, and there's not enough production slots.
So I presume that's the same as the F-150 Lightning and the EV Silverado, is that if you're a tradie, all of a sudden you don't have to have your generator if you're working on a remote site. Your vehicle is that. You can plug in your tools, you can plug in the microwave for lunch, or whatever it is. And camping is exactly the same. It becomes a much more straightforward proposition, actually.
Yeah, exactly. And like hundreds of kilowatt hours of batteries is like, you're not going to use that,
No.
Even if you're cooking, like you'll kill a couple of Ks maybe, but you'll still be able to make it home.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Very good. Okay. Thank you for that. Tim, we're back to you next.
Well, we're sticking with the Americans. There's a bit of a theme, I think, running here. There's a lot of American product we're talking about.
Okay.
And another one that's had a lot of hype is the Ford Mustang Mark E. Now, this was also revealed a couple of years ago, a bit controversial using the Mustang name for an EV that's also an SUV as opposed to just being a pure coupe. They seem to have gotten past that because, like all of these cars we're talking about, Ford cannot build enough of them. It's a really interesting car. I'm not sure what you guys think about the design. I'm not particularly sold on it, particularly when you think about it would compete against things like the Ioniq 5, the Kia EV6, and even that Nissan Ariya looks quite handsome. So I think it's a bold design choice by Ford, but
I reckon, for what it's worth, purely subjective, of course, I reckon they've nailed it. And I think they've got just enough Mustang in there for it to look right. And you think about Ford over the decades experimenting with four-door Mustangs and trying to extend the Mustang brand, but never finding a way to do it. The same way Porsche was doing four-door 911s and they ended up with Panamera. Ford has now found a way to make the Mustang manifest itself in a more practical package. I think they've done a really good job on it. And it's not a surprise, really, that a lot of people are kind of falling over themselves to get one. That's interesting.
I find it a little funny because I look at that thing and I don't see Mustang at all. Yeah, it's got the Mustang badge on the nose and everything. Right. But I think the brilliance of it is it's created such talk about whether it's a Mustang or not that it just markets itself. It's like everyone either hates it or loves it, and there it is, the Mustang name, take it or leave it, and people just want to talk about it.
It's a Kardashian. It's an automotive Kardashian. It's famous for being famous. Okay,
it is a little bit.
That's good. Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say this one is an interesting one. So while we're talking about vehicles that aren't coming here, this one probably will now. The Ford have been saying for a long time that, we can't get it, the Ford Australia, I should say. We are under the understanding that it actually will be coming here. Ford haven't confirmed that yet, but we've heard whispers, and it's looking like it will, but that's only quite recent. So watch this space for an official announcement.
You heard the whisper here first. Okay, that's good. Fantastic. Now, I'll continue us on. This one, we get a lot of correspondence about this car. Why isn't it here? You should be talking about this car. Well, today we are, which is the Honda E. And I remember seeing it as a prototype at the Geneva show in 2019. And for me, amongst a lot of other big launches, I remember Merc had its hypercar, or AMG had its hypercar and all that. It was the star of it for mine because it's just so cute. It echoes the original Civic, the first generation Civic. It's less than 4 meters long. It's rear wheel drive. It's got the motor in the back. It's still got a 171 litre boot. Now, it is on sale in various markets in 2 grades. The E, it has 16-inch rims, but it's 100 kilowatts, 315 Newton meters. It's not as snappy as some of these big trucks. It's about a 9-second 0 to 100. But then there's an E Advance, which has a fraction more power, a little bit quicker, bigger rims. But it's got a 35.5 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery, which is actually water cooled, which is interesting, just to keep it under control, and 222 kilometers range, Richie Beno's favorite number. But for a city car, that's plenty. I don't think it has any designs on big interstate trips. It's very much your urban means of transport. And the thing that gets me is that full width digital dash is so cool because you've got 2, I think they're 12.5-inch screens next to one another, And then you've got the screens for the mirrors. So instead of physical rear view mirrors, you've got a camera either side for the mirror. So it's just wall to wall digital screen, which looks amazing. I don't know what it's like to use, but for me, I thought this is a super cool car and would get a lot of people interested in electronic vehicles.
It's such a shame that it's not coming. I mean, look behind me, people. Look at this.
Precisely.
It is an absolute stunner. It's such a shame. I couldn't agree more. It's a shame that Honda Australia aren't really considering it.
Anyway,
yeah, I love it too. Right-hand drive version exists in the UK. I think it's fun. I think it's exciting. I think it's a perfect kind of city car. It's a shame.
It is a shame. All right, we're all agreed. That means we're wrong. Okay, so Tom, we're back to you again. Take it away.
All right, I got a silly one, but you have to hear me out. So this is the Wuling Hongguang Mini EV, right? Wow. And it's cool for a couple of reasons.
Pronunciation, by the way. That's awesome.
I try really hard. I probably got it wrong. I don't know. Someone will probably add it in the comments. But so if you want, everyone talks about the cost of EV, right? They're so expensive. The cheapest EV in Australia is something like $47,000, right? So this thing, the base model costs just $7,000. So we're talking a mass production car that costs the same as an e-bike, right? We're talking fully affordable here. It's about the size of a K car. So if, those of you who are watching don't know what that is, it's like the subcompact class in Japan, like a little city car. And it's shaped very much the same as well. It's just like a little box.
Kei Jidosha, KEI Jidosha. And they're all 660 cc's. Yeah. For tax reasons. That's right. In Japan. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And they're actually having trouble converting them to electric. But that's a whole other story, though. I'm sure it's a whole other story for another podcast. But this thing. So the other cool thing about it is it's the second best-selling electric vehicle in the world. It was only overtaken by the Tesla Model Y last year, and we're talking serious units. Like 600,000 Model Ys were sold. They sold just over 500,000 of these. So serious units. There's a lot of interest overseas. Obviously, they don't make it in right-hand drive, and I don't think it'll pass ADRs. But
no, that's a hurdle. That for sure is a hurdle. Yeah.
I think it's fun. It has a 20 kilowatt, 85 Newton meter electric motor on the front. Its top speed is 100 kilometers and it travels 100 kilometers on a single charge. Its battery is only 9.6 kilowatt hours.
Nice.
So it's tiny. But there's a top spec car, costs about twice as much, 14 grand thereabouts. It can travel 300 Ks on a single charge and it has 30 kilowatts and 110 Newton meters. So, I mean, we're getting pretty quick there.
Well, the little battery means that if you get one of those economy packs from Woolies, you can probably tie all those batteries together and just plug it straight in. That's awesome.
Boost your range. That's what we're talking about. So I just think it's fun. And I think it'd be sensible for those kind of people who just want an EV and just they want to run down to the shops and stuff. Like those cars don't exist in Australia.
It's true. But the ADRs may be a bridge too far, I would guess. Yeah, that's interesting. Thanks to Wax333 who's commented whilst we've been going about the Honda E. Just circling back to that for a second. He says it's available as an import, and he's exactly right. On various social media car spotting sites, I've seen it spotted on a regular basis. But then AGS or AGS to his or her friend says it's not a good idea. Is Honda Australia even able to service it? So I suppose that goes for some other, unofficial imports as well, or grey imports. But okay, thank you for that, Tom. We are back to you, Tim. Take us away.
Well, we are staying in China with a brand that is starting to become familiar here, and that is BYD.
Yeah.
Now, BYD is about to kind of launch their first mainstream model in the Atto 3, which is a little SUV that is one of the most, if not the most affordable EV in Australia. Tom, you can tell me if that's correct. Yeah.
I think it depends on what state you buy it in. But it aims to be.
Is that the state you find yourself in, or the state that you're actually physically in?
A little column A, little column
very good. Very good. Okay, sorry, Tim.
They're expanding their lineup here. There's going to be the Dolphin, which is going to be called something else, tiny car. Something called the Seal, but will be called the Atto 4 here, which is a sedan. But they've got another sedan called the Han or Han.
Okay, because I was sensing an aquatic theme there, but the Han seems to break that.
Han's kind of ruined that little theme, unfortunately.
Maybe that means something. Someone will tell us.
They're split, so I can actually tell you the range. BYD's range is split in two. They have one range that is aquatic themed of their vehicles, and they have another range that is themed after Chinese dynasties.
Yeah. Gotcha. Great, thank you.
That makes sense.
So there we'll have the Ming, we'll have the Han, we'll have the whatever. Yep, very good.
The whole kit and caboodle. Well, we probably won't have the Han
Right.
my guess, because we're getting the Atto 4, aka the Seal. Why would they bring in two kind of mid-size sedans, electric sedans? It doesn't make sense. The Han overseas, it's actually available as a plug-in hybrid and an EV, but I think BYD have said they're ditching all of any combustion engine stuff and going purely EV pretty soon. It's actually got a 605-kilometre range. That's on the NEDC cycle though.
Yep.
But 3 Series size, quite handsome, lovely. Forget about it. We're not getting it.
Okay. Okay, fine. Well, exactly. Let's forget about that and move on to the next one. I've got one. It's the Nio ET5. Now, this is NIO, not Neo from the Matrix. This is NIO. The company, I just did a little bit of backgrounding. I've heard of it. I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners have as well. It was founded in 2014. It's got offices all around the place, mainly in China, of course, but it's got an R&D centre in Oxford for engineering in England. It's got a design studio in Munich. It's got an autonomous driving facility in San Jose in California. It's also a bit of a Tesla in that it does power units for domestic use, has 9 different car models. And the ET5, Tom, this is one that you called out as being particularly noteworthy. That's a 5-seat mid-size hatch. It's super sleek. Frameless windows. People on YouTube will be able to see hopefully what we're talking about. Soft closed doors, flush door handles. It has what they call a pano cinema cockpit. So again, it's got the screen-rich kind of environment inside the car. It's a dual motor, all-wheel drive, 150 kilowatt induction motor in the front and a 210 kilowatt permanent magnet motor on the rear. 0 to 100 in 4.3 seconds. It's got 700 Newton meters. So it's this amazingly sleek 5-door machine that can go like a cut cat. But I don't think we're in line to see it for the time being. So it's another one that's kind of hidden from us.
Yeah, they've got their eyes firmly set on Europe for the time being and left-hand drive. But yeah, the brand's exciting. They're kind of unlike a lot of other like rival Chinese brands. These guys are really focused on performance, and this is a clear swipe at Model 3. I think it's just very similar specification, very similar layout, and I think it looks really cool. And I think there's a lot of promise behind Nio. So and they have global aspirations. It's just a matter of time until they can do right-hand drive, I think.
Great. Okay, so Tom, I think we're back to you for your final inclusion.
Yeah, well, these cars actually are coming here, just not yet. So this is the Volkswagen ID3 and ID4. And globally, these cars are really important because they're fully mainstream offerings and they've got the backing of Volkswagen Group. And we're talking full backing, global production. So not the kind of limited production we've seen from some startup EV automakers or some that are just doing, EVs as part of their lineup, like Peugeot, for example. So we're seeing this is like a full service thing.
Yep.
They're actually set to outsell Tesla in some markets in Europe. So this is the real kind of existential crisis for Tesla coming for it now from Volkswagen. We're not getting them here yet because the brand has said, look, you guys don't have any emissions incentives to meet. You have sort of pretty mild offerings when it comes to kickbacks for the consumer for actually buying an EV. So we've been sort of put right at the back of the queue to get these cars, but they are out there in Europe and they're doing very well as well. Base models get 110 kilowatts, 310 Newton meters, kind of like an emulation of the current entry-level engines in Volkswagen's range anyway. Base cars go about 330 Ks, top specs go about 550.
That's nice. Yeah, that's plenty.
We'll be getting ID3, which is golf-sized, ID4, which sits between T-Roc and Tiguan. It's not quite as big as the Tiguan, but it sort of falls in between. And we will be getting the ID5 as well, which is a coupe version of the ID4. So kind of that trendy look and design, which is kind of exciting. Prices, they're really aggressive on them. They reckon by the time they arrive here in Australia, they're looking at a sort of 40K for the ID3, which would make it right now the cheapest EV in Australia, and around the mid 50K region for the ID4. So about the same price as a Tiguan R-Line, they reckon. So I reckon they're really exciting, but it's probably going to be at least another year before we see them here, which is a bit of a shame.
It's true, isn't it? Because, so many people, as I rattled off at the top of the show, so many brands are into the electric stuff and Volkswagen is kind of notable by its absence. And it's interesting that you gave us that context as to why. So, yeah, interesting. Good on you. Thank you, Tom.
So many people, you guys would have it too, ask about when is the Volkswagen EV coming? It's a brand that the people who buy a Volkswagen are like the perfect candidates to go and buy an EV. So
Totally.
it's a shame it's not here already.
All right. Now, I think we're finishing up on your last one now, Tim, and it's another one that's been around for a little while. Let us in on it.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So it's another American. All of these have been like Chinese or American, except for a couple, which is very interesting. This is a Lucid, the Lucid Air. What I love about Lucid is this company was started by the guy who used to be the VP of engineering at Tesla, and now he's started his own venture. Good on him.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Look, this thing is incredible. Lucid Air, it's a stunning car. Was also revealed a couple of years ago. It is being sold, I think, only just gone on sale in America. Tesla Model S, Mercedes-Benz EQS, I guess you could say Porsche Taycan kind of rival as well, like a very large sedan. Absolutely stunning, very, very sleek. Also got incredible range. The single motor one has 653 kilometers of range.
Wow.
And I think it's the Grand Touring, which is the top spec one with dual motors, is 832 kilometers.
Well, that's plenty. That's overkill, really. That's amazing.
You kind of just don't need it. And you can apparently charge it 500 kilometers in about 20 minutes or something like that. It's bananas.
Yeah.
But it is going to be built in right-hand drive. I actually contacted them a little while ago, and it will be built in right-hand drive, but it's just going to take a long time. So it's another one kind of wait and see for Australia.
I suppose it would be worth saying that to get that kind of fast charging, you'd need Thor to slam his hammer into the kind of side of the car and get that kind of voltage into it, wouldn't you, really?
Pretty much.
But I suppose it's saying the car's capable of doing that. Yeah.
Look, awesome. I mean, you better drive to, what was that, Melbourne to Sydney?
Yeah.
Technically?
Yeah, which is the big acid test, isn't it, for this market? A long intercity run like that. That's quite a threshold to cross.
It's always a question I get as well. People go, "Oh, but can it go to from Sydney to Melbourne on a single charge?" That seems to be what some people think they do every week. Maybe some people do that every week. I don't know, but it seems like that's a very high bar to beat, and that's the problem with electric cars in Australia. Is like that's the average distance between cities here. It's 800 k's thereabouts.
I think some people do it every couple of days, but they're in Kenworths and Max, and that's a whole other question about hydrogen and EVs and all of that. We'll leave that for another day. But
it's the hydrogen episode. Keep an eye out for that.
Thank you for that, Tim. I will now finish us off. You talk about quirky, Tom. Chery. Now, Chery, Chery, no double R. So I don't know what that's about, but they were in the Australian market. There's chat about there's a mooted return to Australia. But this one, it's called the Chery QQ, or it might be double Q, I'm not sure, QQ Ice Cream. And it's a 3-door, 4-seat micro hatch. It's only 3 meters long, 1.5 meters wide. Now get this for price. In China, it costs 29,900 yuan. That's 6,590 Australian dollars. So that's a straight kind of conversion without any taking any import costs and distribution costs. But still, that's not much money. Comes in 3 flavors: pudding, cone, and sundae. Has U-shaped LED daytime running lights, but halogen headlights. Again, maybe it's the same motor, Tom. It has a 20 kilowatt motor, a lithium iron phosphate battery, which is older technology, let's put it that way. And it has 2 driving range options. Standard is 120, long range is 170. I think the Cherys that we're more likely to see is the Tiggo. There are 6 SUVs, and then there's a Rizzo sedan. This one, again, the ADRs would be looming large for a car this small, and built on a tiny little platform like that. But it's a heap of fun. And if you could make it work, it would go through the roof. There'd be people ready to buy that as a little inner city runabout at the drop of a hat. And it's huge fun. Different colors, different flavors, the whole bit. It's as quirky as they come.
It's the prime competitor, actually, for the Wuling Hongguang, which we mentioned at the beginning.
Wouldn't that be a great comparison? I'd love to do that as a back-to-back comparison. Now, while we've been going, AGS says, I just hope that our current government will do something to support the EV availability, affordability, and infrastructure support, as petrol prices are ridiculously high at the moment, and they are. I know a lot of people say that, and I'm not saying I subscribe to it, but the counter argument is, why should my taxes subsidize your new car? So people get very shirty about, I don't want taxpayer money to be subsidizing cars, but it's an environmental issue. It's a bigger picture thing. And many countries, some more notably than others, have gone down that road wholeheartedly. So yeah, I think anyway, with a change of federal government, you never know what's around the corner.
Well, I've got to say as well, it's not just a subsidy. Like a lot of people talk about a subsidy, and when I've been going out there talking about our EV guide report that we've done, I don't know, maybe we can put the link in the description or something. But there's a bit more around like what governments can do for supporting it. And a lot of that is actually building infrastructure. Like I think that the comment actually mentioned infrastructure, and that is actually being done. So there is a federal fund set up. It's called Arena, and that helps fund charging. It's focused a lot around the Eastern Seaboard at the moment, but I've seen the effects firsthand. There's many super fast DC chargers going in, which have drawn from that funding pool. So, and the current government plans to double that fund. So we should see double the amount of chargers going in. Exciting
well, maybe
times.
The celebrity spokesperson could be Tina, Tina Arena. Anyway, okay. Sorry, just a thought. I mean, it writes itself.
Amazing.
Really. It writes itself. Okay, so that's our wrap of what do I want to say? 12 in total EVs that we're not seeing. Some we are, but not just yet. It just shows how diverse that whole market is globally. We're getting more diverse by the minute, but there are still some where access is denied. So interesting to go through them. Thank you, guys. Now we'll move into cars that we have been driving that are in Australia. In fact, they're in our garage. Tim, can I start with you, please? What have you been driving of late?
Well, apart from I was on leave recently, and the main thing I drove was the previous generation Mitsubishi Outlander base model, but we won't go into that because that was a rental car.
Yeah, let's not.
It's best for everyone we don't.
Let's keep the vibe upbeat. Anyway.
I think so. Just before that, I had a bit of time with the new Lexus LX, which of course is Lexus's version of the Land Cruiser 300 series. Huge beast of a thing. I drove the LX 600 Sports Luxury, which
I might add for the people watching on YouTube, the pics that we're showing are of the ultra luxury, but you get the idea.
Exactly right, and it looks much the same. The one that I drove was about $170,000. Now, the whole range tops out at 210. Sorry for that ultra luxury. It's a 4-seater. Now, that's quite a big difference from the Land Cruiser, which is 90 to 130K. So it is quite the jump if you want that Lexus badge. But look, to be honest, I've not actually driven the Land Cruiser yet.
Okay,
I've seen the interior and can compare them and stuff. And Lexus has obviously Lexified the whole thing. So it looks pretty baller, like it's very bold in the metal, and then you get inside and they've added a lot of luxury touches, particularly sports luxury and ultra luxury. It's very plush. It's so quiet. I really enjoyed driving it. So the one I drove, the 600, that's the petrol engine.
Yes.
So it's the V6 twin
turbo.
The V6
twin turbo,
and 305 kilowatts, the whole kit and caboodle. Now, what was interesting, the ride wasn't great. It was a little bit jiggly and a little bit firm, which I was really surprised. But it does have 22-inch wheels, so that might not help things necessarily.
Yes, they would be a contributor to that behavior.
You expect something like that, you're just going to glide over, speed bumps and stuff like that, and you just really didn't. I found it hard to fault, but then very briefly I drove the diesel version just at the end of the time I had it. And honestly, that's the pick. My brief time with that engine is so responsive. It just fits better with that chassis. Like it makes sense as a vehicle to have that as a diesel. No shade if you want the petrol version. The ride was better. Everything, like it just made more sense.
Isn't that interesting?
More cohesive vehicle. Yeah.
Because I also recently drove the new generation NX, and it was the top spec plug-in hybrid one. And it's like, it's so plush on the inside. You're expecting the ride to be really good, but it just fell short of what I expected on the ride front. And again, like huge wheels. So maybe we've sort of seen the end of like the super plush Lexus ride era, and we're going into something a bit different now.
Wow. I think we might be.
They need to ride on 14s with 75 profile rubber.
So Steelies.
Exactly.
But people just love those massive wheels. I don't personally get it. I get the aesthetic, but I would much rather be comfortable in what I'm driving. But
I think we could do a whole episode about wheel size. Like, enormous wheels ruins the ride quality.
Well, then the podcast will be done. There it is. That's it. Okay.
pretty much.
Thank you, Tim. That's good. Tom, you're on brand here. You're on the brief. The car that you've been driving, and it's only very recently. Fill us in on that.
All right, so this one's the latest version of the Tesla Model 3, and it is by far the best-selling electric car in Australia. And the one I drove is the best-selling version of the best-selling electric car in Australia. It was the base model rear-wheel drive version. They call it rear-wheel drive now. It used to be called the standard range because the range is now anything but standard. It travels like 491 kilometers on a single charge, and that's on the WLTP cycle. So that's not even trying to fudge it with any DC, like that's serious range.
Yeah.
To the point where like I get a lot of people like asking me, couldn't you, isn't it a pain in the ass to like sit around for an hour while you wait for it to charge? But I think, that's a bit of a misconception about EVs. You don't really charge them like that. You just pick up charge here and there, and maybe you do a fast charge once a week sort of thing. And that's what this was like. There's no concept of range anxiety in it. You just drive it around. And I was even surprised. Like I'd been driving it for 3 or 4 days and I looked at the thing and I still had 40% battery left. And so
I think it's really valuable that you're doing what you do, because you're kind of at the leading edge of all that, driving so many different EVs. You're getting a very good feel for how to live with the different vehicles, not just assess them on a technical sense, but a living with them kind of thing is so valuable.
Yeah, I do. And I end up with these sort of terrifying moments, like throwing the power out in an Airbnb because I plugged my Nissan Leaf in and it threw the fuse box.
All the lights dimmed and then they went out. Yes.
Yeah, literally. That's literally what happened. And almost running out of range when I took a MX-30 just to the closest DC charger outside of Sydney. So anyway, you get the idea.
Yeah,
but I really do see the appeal of the Model 3, like huge range and the features. There's just like the connectivity of it. It's once you've experienced it, it's really hard to go back from. Like you go back to like a normal car and you have to put up with all the normal car things. Like, okay, you got keyless entry and whatever. In the Tesla, you don't even worry about that. Like it's all, you preset your air conditioning, you preset your nav, and then you just meander on down to the car. It's already open by the time you get to it. You put it in drive and off you go. That's it. There's no push start ignition. There's no screwing around with keys. It's just like this kind of next generation of what cars should feel like, and they've nailed it, to be honest. And like there's some silly stuff, like there's some Silicon Valley overthought and undercooked, like moving everything to that center display is a bit of a pain in the ass. And a lot of the touch elements, they look great when they're sitting on the shelf in the Apple store, but trying to use them while you're concentrating on the road, like some of them are just too small. Yes. Like it's not really a usability, good point. But anyway,
the issue is also your big sausagey fingers as well, Tom. I mean, there's that.
Yeah, that's true. I end up pressing 3 or 4 buttons at once, and before I know it, I'm doing karaoke. You
basically
and all the lights are turning on, and
you wreck it, Ralph. Okay, I mean, let's put it that way. Okay, well, we better move on. But people will be able to see that review very shortly, and a video as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, keep an eye out on YouTube. There will be a video component to that review. I assume it'll go live sort of mid next week, so keep an eye out for that.
Fantastic. All right, thank you for that. I'll round it out. Subaru Outback. Now, this is the entry point to the Outback lineup. They call it the all-wheel drive. All of them are all-wheel drive, but anyway, it's called the Subaru Outback all-wheel drive. It's 41.5 grand, 2.5 litre Atmo petrol, the flat 4 that we're all familiar with. 138 kilowatts, 245 Newton meters with a CVT. Now, the pluses for this car, it's roomy for its size. It's 4.9 meters long, so it's not a small car, but it is roomy within that footprint. There's just hectares of space. It's comfortable, plenty of pulling power. It weighs 2,200 kegs, so it's not a lightweight, but there's still plenty of performance there. It steers nicely, and I found that it has a good turning circle, surprisingly good turning circle. It's quiet, practical, plenty of equipment. They've gone to town on the safety. So it's a super easy car to live with. The negative for me was that it tends to scold you all the time. It's like your nasty aunt that's always sort of rapping you on the knuckles. Facial recognition, it's telling you constantly, keep your eyes on the road. All I was doing was just looking to change a radio station. It beeps at you. The car ahead's moved off. Yeah, I know. I'm just giving it half a beat because I don't want to run into it. You're going to the edge of the lane. Beep, beep, beep. Stay in the lane. I'm in the lane. I haven't even looked close to going out of the lane. It defaults to stop start when you restart the car. There's a little shortcut in the menu to turn it off, but you can't turn it off permanently. The CVT in this car, it's okay. I don't love it, but it's okay. I thought it was a really good car. And for that money, as the entry level into Outback, I think it's pretty well specified, and it would be a fairly easy car to live with.
The Subarus are all real value offerings at the moment, aren't they? Like, you know,
right.
you don't have to get the top spec. For some reason, everyone does. Like, I was talking to Subaru about this, and I said, "Oh, you know, where's the demand?" Like, "Oh, it's all at the top of the range." Why? Buy an entry level one. It has all the stuff.
It's the law of diminishing returns, isn't it? I suppose it's the gap you make between that and the top one. If you can make it appealing enough, the walk up is doable.
But they used to be, remember when Subaru was like a slightly premium Japanese brand and it was like always priced above here? And yeah, it's so interesting that everyone else has come up. And Subaru now is like, oh, you're good value now.
Well, also, I mean, you talk about screens in the Tesla, Tom. I think it's nice that Subaru's got themselves under control in terms of the multiple screen thing. They used to have 2, if not 3 screens. It's all in one now. And there's a pretty sensible mix between sliders and things on the screen and actual dials. I think they've got that right. So there's a lot they're getting right. It's a really nice car to drive. No qualms with it, except the kind of net nanny personality that it exudes every now and then. All right, that's our garage. Thank you for that. We're quickly going to go to feedback. We've had feedback on YouTube as we've been going, which has been fantastic. Thank you. But last week we were talking about the best cars we've ever driven, which was quite an episode. And the evocatively named Godsey Wears Cons said, look, yes, the NSX, it was in Honda's golden era. We touched on the NSX with the CRX, the Civic, Integra, Prelude, S2000, VTEC, wanted them all, had a Prelude, loved it, and says, congrats on the first live podcast. So thank you very much, Godsey. But Hammer Rocks, our old mate, noted that the NSX and MX-5 were game changers. And Fatman Overlanding, another regular commenter, suggested that would be a good podcast topic, you know, game-changing cars. And all I can say to that is thank you. And that is on the list. And I think we will do that as a future podcast. That's awesome. So thank you very much for that. And with that, we've reached the finish line. So it's time to say thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
And thank you, Tim.
Thank you, JC.
And thanks to our listeners and viewers and to our production multitasker, Mr. Brett Sullivan. Thank you, Brett. And again, as a tip of the hat to Mr. Pritchard, he's wearing a T-shirt saying, after Monday and Tuesday, even the calendar says WTF. Jump into the conversation, Cars Guides on Facebook and Instagram, or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. Listeners, please take a moment to rate and review the show. 5 is the preferred number of stars. Thank you. And viewers, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the Cars Guide channel so you can stay on top of all our latest content. But before we go, I was picking up my car from service last Friday afternoon. I said to the boss, you know, nearly knockoff time, eh? You don't live far away from the pub, do you? And he said, look, it's a 5-minute walk from my house to the pub. It's a 25-minute walk from the pub to my house. The difference is staggering.
I think I've heard that one before.
You may well have, Tom. You may well have.